Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Path 11 podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about rainbows. Look at how beautiful this book is, The Rainbow Tablets Journey Back to Wholeness. And my guest today is Sia-Lanu Estrella. And this actually author and book was recommended to a listener. So I want to thank Lee, or Leah, I'm not sure how she pronounces it, but she sent me an email after listening to our show that we had with Carrie Hummingbird. I kind of have the email here. And she was just talking about how she picked up on the synchronicities that we were talking about rainbows with Carrie Hummingbird. And about a month ago, one of our podcast listeners came across Sia-Lanu's book, and she ordered it and said, hey, maybe you might want to interview her for the Path 11 podcast. So that's what we're doing today. I am so excited. I would like to welcome Sia-Lanu to the Path 11 podcast. How are you?
Amazing. Yeah, it's so lovely to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yes, we've been trying to get you on for a while, but you were moving during COVID. You were in Australia. And let me give our listeners a little background that you have been channeling and offering multidimensional healing since your teens. You are Australian born and you were living in Peru, but now you've moved to London, correct?
That's about it.
Okay. That's a big jump. And then it says here that you share your gifts through mentorship, worldwide retreats, and when cosmic developments made it possible for the rainbow tablets to be restored to Earth, you were called urgently to channel this manuscript that I have here, the rainbow tablets. And we are going to talk about the gifts of the rainbow frequency and what that means. And I haven't gone back to actually listen to the interview that I did with this shaman, Carrie Hummingbird, but I remember we were talking about rainbows, and I have a Reiki student of mine that when I was teaching her Reiki, one of the things that she naturally did was surround herself in rainbows, and then she would put rainbows around the people that she was working on. And I have always had a connection with rainbows since I was a little girl. I didn't think that I think most little girls do, I'm not sure, but all of my drawings were always of rainbows and outside and birds and clouds. But I am fascinated with the chakra system. I have a deep connection to the rainbow itself. And then reading your book, I got a little freaked out because it's like, okay, as you're reading this book, you are going to be receiving a transmission. And I was like, I don't know if I need a transmission yet. Hold on, what's going on here? What am I tapping into? So I am really excited to be here with you today and to learn, about the rainbow frequency and about the rainbow warriors and, some stuff that you can tell us about the rainbow prophecy, the cosmic rainbow prophecy and stuff like that. But first, I want to learn more about you. And you've been channeling since your teens. So, oh my gosh, that must have been pretty intense. So yeah, tell me more about your story.
Do you know what? I would say for me, it's not intense at all. It's the only way I've ever known. So it was, I say my teens, but really it was from when I was a little girl, So I came in with a lot of my gifts open. I was clairaudient, clairsentient, claircognizant, clairvoyant. And I just thought that was how everyone experienced the world. So, it was just the way I knew how to experience the world. And I guess, coming into my teens, I got a call to start working with my healing. And so this is when I actually started with Reiki. That was my way in. I did my Reiki training when I was 15 years old. And then I guess like most people or many people, I took a bit of a detour. I knew what I was here to do, but it wasn't really fitting with, I guess, what my parents thought I should be doing with my life at the time, what society told me, etc. So, I had the experience that so many have had where I went off and took the scenic route. I had the corporate career and it was challenging, because I remember in one of my first professional jobs, I was telepathic. And again, it was just how I'd always been. And I remember a couple of times, really embarrassing times where, one of my managers would think something behind me, but because I couldn't see that their lips hadn't moved, I would think they'd said it. So I would answer it. And then it would be kind of this awkward thing where they'd be like, how did you know what I was thinking? And I'm like, I didn't. You just said it. And they're like, no, I didn't. I thought it. And I'm like, oh, do. I mean, what do you say in that situation?
Right.
So it was actually quite difficult for me. And I think a lot of people who've had their gifts open have experienced this, where it's difficult to operate in the normal world, you know, because you interpret it in a different way. So I actually went through a period where I completely blocked off all of my gifts, and I tried to live what I thought was normal. And it was a very strange experience, because I suddenly realized that I didn't know how to make decisions in that way, because I'd always been so connected with my guidance and my intuition that I suddenly felt paralyzed. I couldn't decide between things. And I thought, how do people do this? How do people sit there and try and navigate this experience of life when you're not connected in with your intuition, you know? So gradually, obviously, I came back to opening it up, and then was called to move to Peru. I actually felt it for about 12 years, but then I finally answered the call about 3.5 years ago, and it was the most sacred mountain over there. So another thing, I could talk to mountains, I could talk to, you know, trees, and, you know, all of these other beings, which again, so many of us can do. And I believe most of us can as children. It's just really natural to us. It's just that, you know, social conditioning kind of drills it out of us. And so the really sacred mountain over there summoned me, and I sold my apartment. I gave up my job. I left everything that I knew, and I arrived in Peru with 2 bags and no plan. And I just said, okay, guys, so what are we doing here? You know, like, somebody tell me what this is all about. And that was when my journey really began. You know, I'd left everything behind. There was nothing for me to go back to. So it was just this absolute leap of faith. And it was incredible.
Wow. So tell me a little bit more about how the rainbow tablets came through to you, and you had this call to write this manuscript. Yeah.
So I do share in the, I believe it's the introduction of the book, my first day arriving in Cusco. Jet lagged as anything, absolutely exhausted, 36-hour transit or something like that, and high altitude, you know. So all I wanted to do was sleep. And then I heard Pachamama. So Pachamama is the Peruvian name for Mother Earth or Gaia. I heard her summon me up the mountain to the Temple of the Moon. And I was like, Pachamama, I can't. I'm so exhausted. I can't. I don't have the energy. And she was like, it's really important that you come and you sit in ceremony today. So I work a lot with ceremony. So I had a tiny nap, and then I went and bought my flowers, and I went up there. It took me probably 2.5 hours to walk what was really a 40-minute walk, because I was just so out of breath with the altitude, but I knew it was important. And I came into ceremony, and I grounded myself into the land. So it was really about me reintroducing myself to the land, and giving myself in service to the land, saying, I've answered the call, I'm here, I'm yours, I give myself, you know, in my highest service. And when I opened my eyes, there was this rainbow just in front of me. So I was kind of like on an edge, and it was going down into a gully. But it wasn't a rainbow like we see in the sky. It was like a hovering pillar of rainbow light, like an actual pillar. And I heard Pachamama say, go into the rainbow. And of course, I took it very literally. I'm like, I can't. There's no way to get down and get across. And so, again, she said, go into the rainbow. And I thought, maybe she means energetically. So I connected in with the rainbow, and I had this incredible moment of sensing the rainbow as consciousness, becoming aware that it was not just color, it was actual consciousness. And as I became aware of that, I actually saw the colors pulsating. They weren't just these kind of, set pillars of color. They were expanding and contracting. And I sort of, it was such a profound moment that I kind of went, like it was it was a really powerful thing. And then, of course, when I did that, I jarred myself out of it. So that night I went home and I went to sleep, and I just thought something really big happened today, but I knew I hadn't fully understood it. And the next day I had to go and buy some things, for my home. And I walked down to the bus stop and I asked the inspector there which bus did I need to get to the plaza. And he said arco iris, and arco iris is rainbow in Spanish. So I had to catch the rainbow bus to get to the plaza. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And it pulls up with this big rainbow on the front. And I was just like, what is going on? So it was really introduced to me from the second I arrived in Peru. And then, to be honest, though, it wasn't until about a year and a half later that I actually met the rainbow race. There was a lot. That first year and a half living there was huge for me. A lot of shedding, a lot of ego death, which I know we'll probably talk about, breaking apart all that I wasn't so that I could remember all that I actually was. And then there was a day where I was again up at the Temple of the Moon, and I was, really connected in, and I felt like the divine feminine energy wanting to connect in. It felt like all of the cosmos. It just felt like this incredibly powerful energy. And the message from the time that I moved to Peru was stop being small. This is a message so many of us get. Stop being small. Stop keeping yourself in a box. Stop fearing your power. We need you in your power. And I was doing it, but it was very confronting. This was a big part of my ego death, to actually embrace that. And I think it's something so many of us struggle with. And so as I felt the divine feminine energy come in, she was coming in with such force, and I was resisting. And she said, she said to me, do not put me out on the curbside. Do not tell me that I'm too much. I am the divine mother, and I am you, and you are me. And I had to surrender to this incredibly powerful energy. And so it was this really big experience, to feel like I was allowing the energy of all of the cosmos to kind of pulsate through me. And then afterwards, I felt the energy of the Divine Father, the divine masculine energy come in, and it was this very nurturing kind of container. It felt very safe, and I felt very held. And then I felt the two come together. And all of a sudden I was in this place. So I've done multidimensional travel since I was, a teenager. So I've been to many different star systems and many different star races. And I found myself somewhere I'd never been before. And at first it just felt like bliss, like pure bliss. I don't know any other word. And I was just, taking it in. And after a while I'm like, why am I here? Is there something I'm meant to do or learn? And I saw the white, because it was very, very pure and very, very white, that there was this rainbow frequency running through everything. It was like this iridescent rainbow color. And then it kind of took form. So these were still etheric light beings, very, crystalline beings, but they kind of took on a shape with the rainbow frequency, and they introduced themselves as the rainbow race. And that was my first ever contact with them. And then obviously once that contact was made, we started working together. And they told me, I know we're going to talk about this a bit more, but they told me that I had been encoded with the rainbow tablets. Myself and my counterpart had been encoded with the rainbow tablets. And at this time, my counterpart and I had come into union to, I guess, restore these codes within me. And that we'd been waiting for lifetime after lifetime, been waiting for the right time for this to be returned. And that now the time was right. So, it was, they said they were going to give me a transmission of the rainbow tablets, but I had to make a commitment on the spot that I would not sit on that remembering. They said that this is deep cosmic remembering that belongs to everyone, and if you choose to receive it, you need to make it available to everyone. So I knew I was committing in that moment that I could see it was a book and it needed to go out there to everyone, and I needed to be a lot more visible to make it accessible to everyone. And I said yes.
Now, I know our listeners are saying, okay, what are the rainbow tablets? What is this? So can we go into that?
Yeah, definitely. So, so I need to talk a little bit about our cosmic history to share this. So the way it was shared with me, and before I started channeling the rainbow tablets, I had to go through a series of transmissions myself so that I could actually be shown what it was and understand it before I could bring it into words. At the beginning, there was the all. So just this beautiful consciousness that is divine love. And the all wanted to experience itself. So it broke apart into the rainbow race. And the rainbow race are these incredible light beings made of the rainbow frequency, because the rainbow frequency is the divine love frequency. It's the God essence, but actually it's beyond what we think of as God. It's I would call it the all essence. And these beings are they are us in our most unified form. So I'll get to explaining that in a moment. There's no birth or death. There's no gender. They are completely in wholeness. There's no time. They exist outside of time and space. And so this was the experience for a while. And then it was agreed that the all wished to have a deeper experience of itself. So the decision was made to break apart into incarnations. And there's actually a beautiful little image of this in the book that I'll just quickly try and find. But basically, each of our rainbow unified selves broke apart into many different incarnations. So you can sort of see that there, And so this is what we might think of as past lives, future lives, parallel timelines, etc. We're all aware that there are many versions of ourselves, because we talk about this. We talk about higher selves, past lives, our future selves. We know this. And so each of these fragments is one part of our rainbow unified self. And we're all just having this experience in this experiment of separation. And after a bit longer, it was desired that we would go deeper into this experiment, where we would actually forget that we were the all essence, and that's when the rainbow tablets were kind of birthed, because in going into this experiment, which was known as the reign of darkness, we needed to make sure that the remembering was preserved. So it was encoded into certain, counterpart pairs, so that it would be, there for the time when it was ready for it to be returned. And then we agreed to be bound. So I was one of those that had agreed to carry that transmission, rainbow tablets, the great remembering, and be bound so that it wouldn't be restored until the time was right. So the reign of darkness, again, the purpose of it was just experience, that this whole experiment in separation has all just been about experience. And it was never going to end by light defeating dark, because they're two parts of the one. It is all divine love. Everything in existence, everything on earth, everything in the multiverse is of the all. It is of the God essence. It is made of divine love. So what we may perceive as dark or other words that we might use, evil, negative, whatever it might be, it's still divine love at its essence, but struggling more with this experiment of separation. So it's gone more into the darker side of this duality experience. The moment that the reign of darkness was going to end was never going to be by one defeating the other. It was going to be by enough beings across the cosmos coming back to that remembering of their own rainbow frequency, that remembering of the divine love essence of the wholeness within. And we reached that point in our Earth experience of time at the beginning of last year. So we've been over this last, sort of year and a half, really grounding in this frequency. There are a lot of people, obviously, who've read the book and are connected in with the community. I have a beautiful group on Facebook called the Rainbow Tablets, Rainbow Frequency Stabilizers. And, over the last year and a half, we've all really been anchoring this, remembering this higher timeline of unity, of wholeness within. And so now with the restoration of the Rainbow Tablets, and this is just the first of a number of books, there'll be at least 3. There could be more, they haven't told me, but this is the first one. And this is, as you know, it's an overview. So it gives it's deep awakening across 9 core topics, but there's a lot more to come. But basically, it's this remembering that we are the divine love essence within. We are the rainbow frequency, and everything is love. Love is all is love, all is one. So it's this beautiful unity as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing in the beginning too was you were talking a little bit about it, about like the encoding of our DNA and how. I don't know, you could probably speak about that a little bit more. I don't want to mess it up. But, the encoding where that encoding of the DNA kind of with that darkness that had come in was a part of us kind of forgetting who we were.
Yeah, so basically once we went into the reign of darkness, and a lot of people have memories of this, it lasted a lot longer than any of us could have anticipated, for the first thing. But secondly, there were a lot of cosmic wars. There was a lot of struggle in this time. So there were certain star races and groups, etc., that really tried to defeat others, and it was a rough time. And one of the things that happened was that Earth became, in a way, so Earth, to begin with, before this, at the beginning of the experiment in separation, before we forgot who we were, Earth was the playground of the gods. It was just this incredible paradise. It was this rainbow Earth. It was a place that the gods could kind of like. And I say the gods, but really we are all the gods, because we're all that all essence. So it was a place where we could come to, kind of forget, but remember, have that delight of rediscovering it. So it was a really beautiful paradise. And then once we went into the reign of darkness and the cosmic wars broke out, there were certain star races that had quite a parasitical energy, so they started to feed on those lower vibrations. It was like it's their food source, so like fear, hopelessness, anger, all of these sorts of things. So they actually tampered with the DNA of humans, and our human DNA was tampered with, and we were cut off from the higher realms. So we've, on Earth, humans have had a much tougher experience of this reign of darkness than many other star races, because we had that additional layer of the DNA being interfered with, so that we just couldn't even bridge that, to connect with the higher realms. And they also placed energetic grids around Earth. So all of this has been broken down now, the energetic grids that were around Earth. Our DNA is being restored, so a lot of people have already been going through DNA upgrades. There are certain layers of the ego death that we need to go through to be able to access those DNA upgrades, but it's there and available to all of us. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, it just blows my mind. It's just like so interesting. And I feel like the way that you described it in the beginning of your book, I mean, I've always heard of the spiritual awakening. People are waking up. And when you wake up on your spiritual path, for some reason, the way that I was reading it in the manuscript, just made sense. Like, oh yeah, this is what they are referring to as the awakening. We're remembering who we are. We're, waking up to that. But understanding how we lost who we were, I think helped me to make that connection of waking up. I had also wanted to make mention, it's early on page 9, there's a section here about star seeds and masters on the earth. And you talk about masters having to pass through the veil of amnesia. Now, I just want to let our listeners know this was channeled, so this isn't necessarily you who wrote this, but this is coming from the rainbow race. And it says, for until recently, there was one of the only ways to come into embodiment on earth. Many still have not remembered who they are or are re-embodied their gifts, but they often have a sense of feeling homesick for some other world or place. They do not feel that they belong on earth and cannot understand the way humans treat each other. And I cannot tell you how many, I guess you would say many millennials have walked in my office of that generation. And I've been working with some of these ladies since they've been 16 years old, and how many times they say this to me. I just feel like I want to go home, but I don't know where home is. I don't feel like I should be here on earth. And they're not suicidal. It has nothing to do with suicide and not wanting to be on earth, but like they really don't know like why they are here. And they tend to be what we would call empaths, right? They just like feel so much, and they're so affected by things that are happening here on earth that it's hard for them to live here, to be in their bodies because of how much they feel. But how many times have I heard that they feel homesick? They feel like that they have to be from somewhere else. And I've heard it so much that I think probably by the 10th time, like the 10th person came in and said this to me, I started like Googling and researching what's the starseed concept? Because I think one of my clients actually did her own research, and she said, I think I'm a starseed. And this was like years ago. And I'm like, well, what is that? What's a starseed? I'm not sure what that is. And then when I started doing research, I was like, wow. And then when more people would come in and talk to me about that, I would say, oh, have you ever heard of a starseed before? Maybe you might want to look that up. And then when they look that up and they're like meeting this checklist, right? Because now there's like a checklist for everything, that they're feeling some sort of comfort and they're not feeling as crazy. Like, okay, maybe I really am not from Earth, but that's what this longing is, to want to go home.
Yeah, definitely. And, I mean, the first thing I want to say is that the truth is we're all starseeds. We're all from the stars. But there are those who had chosen to be in service on Earth for a lot longer. So they have much more of an Earth energy about them, and they would feel more of a natural sense of home on Earth. But it's funny that you say the millennials are expressing this so much, because I would say it's definitely something that has affected multiple generations have been aware of this. I know even my mum, who's in her 70s now, had this sense of this, but didn't have a way to express it. I think the difference is that now it's safer to talk about these things, because for a long time it wasn't understood and it wasn't safe to talk about these things. You were considered a loony, So it's a really natural feeling, because some people might think that because Earth is in this third dimensional space and we're, a bit lower in the dimensions than some of the other star systems, that we're earlier on in our journey or in our remembering. But actually it's kind of the opposite, especially at the moment, because essentially, as we were getting close to this, it's called the return to unification. So we're in that period now. As we were getting close to the return to unification, the star councils were formed, and it was really identified that Earth. So the essence of it is that all time and space is returning back to oneness now. We're coming back gradually back to wholeness. So time and space is collapsing. This is why everyone's talking about Earth moving up dimensions. We are bringing it all back to wholeness. But it was identified that because of this interference on Earth, because of the tampering with the DNA and the grids that were around Earth and everything, it was kind of almost like the ball and chain of the multiverse. It was just not, as everything's starting to awaken and to rise in frequency and rise in consciousness, Earth was still stuck. And, no one can be left behind. As this experiment comes back to unification, as we come back to our rainbow unified selves, like all aspects of ourselves have to be brought back to one. So this is when it was decided that we needed to really take a lot of the very advanced ascended masters to Earth. You know, they had to incarnate on Earth. So there are millions and millions of starseeds of very highly, you know, I don't want to say advanced. It's hard with our language because our language talks in terms of hierarchy, and the rainbow race, you know, are very clear that there is no hierarchy, you know, but for lack of a better word, you know, they're further along in their remembering, they're further along in their awakening, in their embodiment. And so what we would probably look up to and go, oh, they're the ascended masters, they're way up there. Actually, so many have come down here. We've come down here to be in service. But in order to break it, to actually create the shift on Earth, we had to come in through the veil of amnesia. You know, a lot of people are aware that the veil of amnesia is becoming much, much thinner. So the remembering is far more easy now, and the access between dimensions is so much easier now. But the other thing is we had to come into the programs that we're actually here to break, because we have to break them from the inside. Obviously, our amazing star brothers and sisters are up there really supporting us, but the issue was that the frequencies couldn't get down and be grounded on Earth, because Earth was kind of like trapped in such a low frequency. So we had to come in and bust that open from the inside so that these higher frequencies could come in. So it's a massive co-creation. But when I talk about programs, this is part of this interference, you know, from these parasitical kind of star beings that were feeding off that energy. So there are programs around worthlessness. There are programs around, oh gosh, what was the one that we were talking about? I was talking about one with someone today. I mean, programs around separation massively, you know, feeling like we're isolated, we are forsaken. That's what a lot of starseeds feel, because they've come into that program and they feel almost like forsaken on this planet because the frequency just doesn't match, you know. There's distortion programs around sexuality, around corruption and power, you know, all sorts of things around abuse, you know, the distorted masculine, the distorted feminine. So we've come in, and a lot of starseeds have chosen very difficult situations in their life, very difficult life experiences, because they wanted to come in and experience it and heal it. And when we heal it not just for ourselves. You know, there's an Indigenous saying that when you heal for yourself, you heal for the 7 generations before you and the 7 to come. I would say it's more than that. You know, it's absolutely, we're healing for our ancestors. We're healing for those that are still to come, but we are also healing for the collective, because the more of us who unplug from these programs and say, you know, no, I'm not going to act in that way just because I was abused. I'm not going to then abuse my children and, you know, keep passing it down as we've seen so often, or because that person has done something bad to me, I'm going to treat someone else bad. No, I'm not going to do that. As we break these programs, it heals it for the collective, and it sends out these waves of higher consciousness and waves of love, you know, because we're coming back into that love frequency. So yeah, I guess coming back to this homesickness, this is very unfamiliar, you know, as these incredibly advanced, again, sorry about the hierarchical word, but advanced beings to then come and take on a human form and take on these programs. It just doesn't feel natural. And so there's this homesickness for a different place, a different star system that feels more aligned with the true essence of what we are. And what I would say to people is home is within. You know, the exact same rainbow frequency of divine love that runs through that star system that you feel, whether you can name it or not, but that star system for which you long and you identify as home, the exact same divine love frequency that runs through that runs through you, and it runs through every other being, and it runs through Earth. Yeah, so that's the remembering that we're bringing, that home is actually within. Home is this rainbow frequency. That is home. But because it's been forgotten from Earth for so long because we've been in such a dark space. It can feel like we're very far from home, and we sometimes think that home must be an external place. We forget that we've come here to bring home, to bring the remembering, to bring that beautiful frequency back to Earth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's actually really beautiful. And I hope that explanation helps a lot of people maybe who are feeling that too. I wanted to also, I'm going to go into my notes here about the ego death. And this is kind of in line a little bit with another author that I recently spoke to, Jeff Thompson. He wrote a book called The Divine CEO. He was recently on here, and he talked a little bit in different terms, different ways about the ego death and how sometimes we're looking at the ego as a bad thing. But he also mentioned a reunification with the ego, and we're kind of like cheering for the ego once we are able to kind of separate and be more of the observer of it. So again, there was like this theme that I'm reading for a second time in this channeled material too. And so I want to just read a couple of the parts that I've highlighted, and then we can talk a little bit more about the ego death. So one thing that I highlighted on page 87 was the key is that your higher self and guides will not initiate your ego death until you are ready. So it's not something that you can force. And then on page 89, I highlighted as we've shared, the ego does not actually die. Rather, you break free from its control. You come to view the world and your experience from your higher self rather than your ego. Eventually, you will raise the frequency of your body to the point that it can hold the full frequency of your higher self. And at this point, the ego and higher self will reunite as one.
Yeah.
So I am trying to wrap my head around that because it's like, that you were like, yeah, can you explain that a little bit? Like the ego death and then reuniting. Yeah.
That was new for me as well when that came through. So it's an interesting, to be a channel, it's an interesting experience because as I'm channeling it, I'm like, whoa, no way, So I experience it like the reader. And what they had shared, so in another part of that, slightly earlier part of that chapter, is that because of this shortening of the DNA, our human bodies can't hold the full frequency of the higher self aspect that wanted to come in. So again, I want to take it back to that image of all the little versions of ourselves through time and space, So we've got all these different little versions of ourselves. So each of these would be what we would refer to as a higher self, perhaps, And one of those would incarnate into the human body to come down here on Earth. But because the DNA tampering has, obviously been embedded in the actual physical body, the whole higher self can't come in. So a fragmentation occurs, and that's what forms the ego. The ego is not bad. The ego is actually just a fragmentation of the higher self that was able to come in and be held by this vessel. But because it's coming in and it's being held by the DNA that contains all of these programs and distortions that we're breaking. So this is why we're also rewriting our DNA. The ego takes that on. So that's why we have quite, kind of almost like a shadow experience with the ego, that the ego is operating within those limitations that are not within truth. So the ego death, as you've read, is it's not about the ego ceasing to exist. It's about us not allowing the ego to have control over us, So when the ego runs things, we are generally operating from our pain body, and our shadow self, because the ego will always look to protect us. Its instinct is really beautiful. It wants to protect us, but its way of enacting it is a little bit lost, So say, for instance, if someone's been hurt by someone before, they might adopt an attitude of, well, I've got to hurt others before they hurt me. Not so great, the ego's wanting to do the right thing. It's wanting to protect, but it comes out through this distortion, through these programs. The ego likes to keep us small. The ego likes things to be safe. There's that fear of rejection, fear of being seen, the fear of standing in our power. So our ego will often tell us not to go out on a limb, not to express things, not to talk our truth, not to, not to be too different, all of these things. So, and obviously when we're in those heated moments and we sometimes react in, we might match the aggression or something like that. That's the ego coming out. So the ego death is when we no longer let the ego run the show. Yeah, we can actually be so connected with this higher remembering and this higher self, which at first we experience as outside of ourselves, because it's only as we change the frequency of our physical vessel that more of our higher self can actually be embodied within the physical vessel. We actually become, it is like a bystander. It's like this witness, we can just, hi ego, I see you. Look, I recognize that you've been triggered, and that's okay. But you know what? We're going to act from a place of alignment, divine alignment, and we're going to act from a place from the heart. And we make a conscious decision in every moment not to act from those triggers, not to act from those wounds, not to act from those old patterns of, negative and damaging behavior. So these are the more subtle layers of the ego death. It calls forth from us a really radical level of self-responsibility, and alignment, really being very conscious about our alignment. Because if we're not connecting in each day to really bring ourselves into the heart, to anchor in to, the great Mother Earth, to anchor in to and connect with the great universe. If we're not really connecting in with those energies and bringing ourselves into our highest frequency each day, the density of the energy, and this is where when you talk about empaths, they're very, very affected by this, the density of the energy that we're walking around in and we're existing in drags us back into ego. So I talk a lot about embodiment, and embodiment isn't a one-stop thing. It's not like, oh, I had a great activation and now I'm awake and now I'm this divine being. Embodiment is like living the practices. It's living in that way. It's having the tools and the awarenesses that you can draw upon, so that because as I say, it's not that the ego dies, it's just that our way of interacting with it and being able to choose a higher path, a higher response, one that's far more aligned with the true essence of who we are. That comes through the embodiment.
Wonderful. Now, I have a question too about the rainbow race, because I know that we probably also have a lot of listeners and people who maybe have gone through Reiki training, or they are experimenting, in other types of healing modalities to help people. I think we probably have a lot of light workers that listen, to this podcast. Is the rainbow race available to anyone that calls upon them? So if I'm doing, say, a healing, and I'd like to incorporate the rainbow race in and ask them for their energy for my client. Am I allowed to do that? Number one.
Because essentially we are the rainbow race. We're just in fragmentation. Yeah. So the rainbow we each have a rainbow unified self. Yeah. So I think I don't know other terms that people use for this. I know there's I think there's other terms that people might use for like an overlighting soul or something like that. But essentially our rainbow unified self is us in our most unified whole form. So we don't have gender. We are outside of time and space. We are absolutely pure divine love, rainbow frequency. So that is us. We are made of the rainbow frequency. Everything is and everyone is. So we can absolutely call on the rainbow race and call on our own rainbow unified self to assist, to guide us, to help with any of this healing. And there might be an aspect of, as we try to reach, it's quite a high frequency. So obviously there is a layer of needing to do the work. Whenever we connect in with higher frequencies, higher frequency guides, higher frequency star races, there will be things within us that we need to shed and release. And again, this is the ongoing process of the ego death. So, we are absolutely held in this. We can't be operating in a space of, say, false light or spiritual bypassing and be working in integrity and be working with these higher frequencies, because it just can't happen, So when I mention, false light, again, this is a trick of the ego. The ego will do anything it can to avoid the deep work. It doesn't want to look at what it considers the darker aspects of ourselves, the ugliness, the ugliness within. But actually everything about us is its love, it is divine love. And so what our ugly parts need, or our darker parts need, is actually to be acknowledged, to be forgiven, to be welcomed back into love, and welcomed back into wholeness. And so what can happen is that sometimes people really want to, they want to be all in the light, and if you consider light and dark as duality, we can't get to wholeness by hiding in one or the other. It just doesn't work that way. So the journey back to wholeness is actually, it's a necessary part that we, that we are able to actually look at all of those parts of ourselves and forgive, to have compassion, to love them, to love all that we are. This is the ultimate self-love, coming back to wholeness. So sometimes people will want to hide in, I'm just all about the light and this and that. And so then it's very hard to connect with these higher frequencies, because you're coming from a place of separation and a place of duality. But when we're actually really present with the work, and we're, really committed to coming into that frequency of wholeness, and we're willing to do the work, because it will call us into the work, but it's not something to be feared. The thing that I've discovered on this journey, I've been brought to my knees so many times on this journey, but I've learned to see the beauty in all of it. Like, this whole thing, this whole experiment in an experience in separation that we're all going through in the multiverse was all about experience. And I just feel this experience we're having right now of being on Earth during this great awakening, this great remembering, and the depths of what we're able to feel, whether it's the depths of the bliss and the joy, or it's the depths of the grief, it's like, wow, there's so much beauty in all of it. So I think when we look at our own journey and our own healing process with loving eyes and seeing the beauty in all of it, it takes away the fear, and there's nothing we need to resist. We are so held and so supported. Like I said, we've got the Great Mother, we've got Great Spirit, we've got our whole star family and councils and everything up there just like cheering us on. We're doing big work here. It was not a small assignment to say, as an ascended master, I'm going to go down there on Earth and I'm going to take on all of these programs and I'm going to forget it so that I can break it from the inside. It was huge. And so we have so much support. So yes, we can all absolutely connect in with the rainbow race and reach this really high frequency, just as long as we are honest with ourselves, and we're willing to do the work, and we're not trying to hide or suppress our shadow, or try to be what we think we're meant to be, but actually just be in that purity and integrity of exactly who we are. We are all the divine love essence. It's beautiful.
Now, when you talk about this great awakening and that we're having an upgrade in our DNA, is part of the pandemic and what we're going through right now, is that a part of all of this?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't get too much into that sort of thing. I don't get too much into, the pandemic, the politics, and all of the different things. We will continue to have many, many different things roll out. What I would say is that, and it's in the book, that our societies here, because they were built on this distorted DNA and these distorted programs, it's built, the structure of everything that we know is built on illusion. It's not built on truth. So as the higher frequency is held and anchored into those higher timelines, it destabilizes the lower timelines. So when I talk about timelines, I mean there's a splitting of realities that many of us have been aware of for a couple of years now, where it's actually possible to already start to experience what I refer to as rainbow Earth. So this is not fifth dimensional new Earth. That was just an idea that was seeded as a stepping stone, because at that point, this idea of like complete wholeness would have been too much for us to even conceive. So this is beyond what we would think of as fifth dimensional new Earth. This is rainbow Earth. This is the return of Lemuria within. This is, it's huge. It's beautiful. And so a lot of us are already connected in with that and already living that experience, but bridging it here with the 3D reality. And as we do that, we anchor that higher frequency. It causes destabilization in the lower realities, because and we talk about that in the book, that it's this remembering of this frequency will destroy all illusion. It will actually break it apart, and it will be a collapsing of all that's false. Yeah, so we're bringing back the purity, and because that frequency is so high, anything that's not in alignment with it will essentially collapse. It will be exposed, etc. So we're going to go through a lot of different things, and they did say in the book it could look like it's getting worse before it gets better, but it's actually not. It's the experience that we choose. So I would just like to share my experience of the pandemic. I was in Peru, living in Peru. We had one of the most intense lockdowns of the world. I think South Africa might have been the only one that was around about on par with what we had. And it was very intense, and it would have been very easy to go into fear, to really, deeply be affected by that. Also, most of my work that was lined up for this year was actually physical retreats. So obviously that didn't happen. But I just felt so in trust with the path, and so in trust that I will always be supported in my highest service, that I just didn't have any of that fear come up. So, during the time that I was in Peru, I actually shared higher levels of my work than I had ever shared at that time. There were new offerings that I was asked to birth online. It brought great abundance to me, but more importantly, it was really needed by the people at that time, and it was bringing this incredibly high form of service that I wouldn't have been able to conceive myself. It was just a direction. I then found myself in a position where I absolutely needed to get to a first world country, because I needed to have a small operation, and I couldn't get it in Peru. Borders were closed. So there were no repatriation flights coming for Australia. The EU repatriation flights were not available to me on an Australian passport. And, it could have, again, been a very scary situation. And I'm not going to lie, I had my human moments. I did definitely have my moments of, but then I would realign, and I'm like, that's not my experience. That's not my reality. And so when I was talking to the UK embassy and the airlines and trying to get an exemption. And when I couldn't get it, I couldn't get the bureaucracy to open up. I went into ceremony. I went up to the most sacred mountain. I sat with my beautiful shaman brother up there, and we came into ceremony, and we asked the mountain to open up the pathway. And within 6 days of that time, I was on a flight. I got the exemption through. And so that kind of weaving of the magic, the weaving of co-creation, the holding the highest vision, knowing that your highest path will always be supported. Again, I knew I wasn't meant to go back to live in Australia, but I didn't really have anywhere else to go. So I was planning to just go back to Australia, and then, and I did actually have a flight booked. But then I was guided to go to Stonehenge, and the stone said to me, we need you here. We need you to stay in the UK. So I realized, okay, well, I guess I just have to lose the money for that flight that I've booked. 2 days later, the flight was cancelled and I got a full refund. And because my mum's British, I was able to put through for my citizenship and residency. You know, they were saying it could take 6 months or longer because of the pandemic and the lockdown and everything. I had it in 5.5 weeks. You know, so I share this as real life examples of what it means to live in this frequency. It's not just an airy fairy thing. Like, this is a very tangible way of experiencing the world. And I've been told time and time again, when you embody the rainbow frequency and you walk in this way, it's like and you commit to your higher service, everything is supported. So it's like every step that you take, this rainbow path, like, extends out before you and clears all obstacles in the way. So even bureaucracy, even closed borders, even a pandemic can't stop you from being in your highest service. And so there's always two ways to experience things. You can either plug into your highest timeline and your highest reality and hold that, you know, both for yourself, the gifts for yourself, but also for the collective. Or you can plug into the lower reality of fear and desperation and all of that. And the choice really is ours. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you so much for sharing, you know, that personal experience that you just went through, because I think it really demonstrates the illusions.
Yes, totally.
That one could have seen, like, as these roadblocks, like you said, in the pandemic and the border shut down and all of that. And then all of a sudden, like you said, you come into alignment and everything opens up effortlessly.
Absolutely. You know, and it's the last, you know, the last probably couple of weeks or maybe even month before I left Peru, the message was, you know, just trust, you know, live in this embodied frequency. Because this frequency, this rainbow frequency, is our creative force. Yeah. And because it is divine love, we can weave whatever magic we want from that. We can weave any experience we want, but it's always going to be for the highest good, because the embodiment of that is love. So everything that we create is love, you know. So it's none of the old you know, the old concerns of, oh, but if you have power, you might use it in a corrupted way, or you might use it to take something from someone else. There's none of that, because to actually connect in with that frequency and create in that way, in a way that, as I shared, you know, even bureaucracy can't be a barrier. There are no barriers. You have to really be in that embodiment of your divine love essence, and then everything is aligned.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, do you work individually with others? I know that you said that you had offerings. You know, what kind of work, if our listeners wanted to work with you, do you do any type of like energy healing, or to help somebody get into alignment with this rainbow frequency? To, like you said, I know that everyone's ego death is going to be individual, and the timing will be when it needs to happen. But is there anything that you can help to facilitate?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that can be supported through that as well. You know, even though it is, you know, you go through it in your own timing, it's not something that you have to do alone. You know, like, I mean, obviously the actual work is what you have to do alone, but there's a lot of things that can be supporting. So I've actually been called, especially this year, to have even more ways to work with people. So I can no longer do just one-on-one sessions because of the amount that I'm bringing through, but I've got different layers of ways that people can connect. So the first way is through my offerings on social media. I do a lot of free offerings, so free multidimensional journeys, energy updates. It's really there to support people through this process. So I think there's something like, 15 multidimensional journeys that people can do, and activations and healings that I've already shared. So that's on my YouTube, which is Sia-Lanu Estrella. And also in the Rainbow Tablets, Rainbow Frequency Stabilizers private group on Facebook, I share a lot of energy updates, and we sometimes do some live activations. So that's kind of like the first layer. I'm also on Instagram, Sia-Lanu Estrella. And the next layer is the book. right? So the book is a really accessible way for people to receive a lot of remembering, and I'm sure you know it yourself as well, that it's the kind of book you can come back and read again. You know, I get so many people saying, I have to read it again, and then they access even more of the codes and remembering the second time. So I am working on other books to come out as well. I'm also calling in the right publisher right now, because I need to move from a self-published platform to a professionally published platform. So that's something I'm working on at the moment. And then the next layer is I've just been called to develop a suite of online courses, and these will be online courses all about embodying the rainbow frequency. And so eventually there'll be about 10. I'm going to have to release them one at a time. So the one that I'm about to release is Live from the Heart and Sacred Ceremony. So this is what I was just sharing about how I've created, being able to move through these blocks. It shares how to live in this way and work with ceremony and work through the heart in this way. But there will be other ones as well. The next one will be breaking through fear and limitations, so different points in people's journey, so that they can kind of like look at the suite of these courses and go, okay, well, maybe those 4 things I've got down, I'm good there, but I could really use some help with these other 6 things. So that's a new offering that I've been called to develop. And then the next thing from that is I do online multidimensional retreats. So that was birthed this year. Without being able to travel, I can actually take people there, and we have very tangible multidimensional journeys. Like, all of us have been blown away with this. So I'm working with England, obviously all the magical beings and energies here, Egypt and all of the star codes, the beautiful star brothers and sisters there, the sacred sites. I will probably do one with Australia and also the US, places like Mount Shasta, Sedona. And then above that, there will be physical retreats resuming when when our travel opens up. And then my only opportunity to work sort of one-on-one is my 6-month mentorship program. So I do 2 intakes, one at the beginning of the year, one at the end of the year. I do have waiting lists for all of my offerings. So if people are interested, I really invite them to go to my website, Sia-Lanu and they can go to any of the pages. If they go to the mentorship page, for example, you can choose waiting list, and then you can just tick the offerings that you're interested in. And when I release them, you'll be the first to know, because generally at the moment, anything I release is filled up between 24 to 48 hours. So this is another reason why I'm really working on these online courses, to make it accessible to everyone.
Yeah. Wow, wonderful. I mean, just hearing that, you have this waiting list just shows how many people, like you say, are waking up or wanting to get back connected with this frequency. Yeah.
That's the word. It's like, we're so ready for this. And it's beautiful, the community, the sense of community that comes from it. This is something that I've really seen in the Rainbow Tablets private Facebook group, is that although it's only I post, because the Rainbow Race asks that we keep the channel really clear so that the transmissions, are really easy to see come through. But everyone interacts through the comments, and it's just this beautiful, it's this realization that we're not alone, we're not going through this alone. It can feel so big, and a lot of people as well, when they're first waking up to this stuff, they don't have people to share with it. They sometimes feel like, and especially, I've had clients say, well, I'm realizing that my friends' circles, a lot of what we do is talk badly about other people, or, I don't want to do that anymore. That's not in alignment with me anymore. Or other people, men might say, I realize that all we do is we drink, and that's not really, I want to be connecting in a different way. And so it can feel sometimes a bit isolating, or even, as you said, like if people are feeling like this homesickness and it doesn't sound logical, so maybe they don't feel comfortable expressing that to people, to suddenly have this amazing community where everyone's like, oh yeah, that's totally normal. Yeah, and they can share experiences. It's like, wow, we are all doing this together. And this is the thing, it's just a massive co-creation. We are all helping each other to remember. So, we all activate each other. We all lift each other if we allow ourselves to do so, and if we allow ourselves to receive. And it's just, we've all got so much to share, and just being able to connect in that way is such it's just such a beautiful experience. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad that we finally got you on here, that you're settled where you are. We were able to actually make this happen. It was well worth the wait for me. And I definitely want to thank, my podcast listener, Lee, who sent this suggestion. Again, synchronicities.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful. And for those of you who were listening to this podcast, I just want to remind you that you can actually watch the conversation on path11tv.com, so you can see what Sia-Lanu was talking about. She showed us some pictures in the book of the fragmentation and what that looks like. And here's a copy of the book again, The Rainbow Tablets Journey Back to Wholeness. So it's important to get this book. If nothing else, get on her wait list, go to her website. I am going to be following you probably once we get off of this call. I'm going to go to your Instagram, go to your Facebook. Yeah. I'm really interested to get some of these, transmissions and see, what happens in my own life as well. So thank you so much. This was such a gift.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And just sending lots of love, and thank you for the work that you're doing, because it's really amazing to be sharing all that you're sharing with everyone. So honoring that.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed our podcast today, and I will talk and see you guys soon. Take care, everyone.
See you later.